The Spin-Off Podcast Network.
Talofa lover, I'm Madeline Chapman, editor at The Spin-Off. If you have the means, consider supporting our high-quality journalism by becoming a Spin-Off member. Sign up now at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
You're listening to Business is Boring, a podcast that reckons it's anything but. Business is Boring is brought to you by SparkLab, offering inspiration and practical advice to help businesses find their edge. To hear more about SparkLab, including details about the latest events, workshops, and business tools, visit sparklab.co.nz. And now, here's your host, Simon Pound.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and welcome to Business is Boring. Allbirds is one of the great Kiwi-born success stories. They have come from the bottom of the world with the support of a Kickstarter to launch, to now lead an industry-wide conversation about measuring, reporting and reducing carbon and using more sustainable materials. With 25 billion pairs of shoes made a year and synthetic and petrochemical-derived materials the norm, there is a lot of carbon and planet impact to influence. At the end of 2011, Allbirds listed on the US stock market, raising hundreds of millions to further their mission. The shares went up a lot and then have been caught up with the pullback on growth in retail stocks. But the company still has a big war chest and a huge mission to fulfill. And part of that comes from launching products that can lead the industry, like their moonshot, the first zero-carbon shoe. To talk that process, moving past sustainability to regeneration, the role of New Zealand in that, and what's next, Tim Brown, co-founder and co-CEO, joins us now. Tēnā koe, Tim. Thank you so much for being here.
I really appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Hey, so since the last time we talked, Allbirds back then was a private company, and now you've gone public with an IPO. What does that allow you to do, having that structure? And what do the funds you've raised allow you to do?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us. Yes, it's been quite the roller coaster since we went public a year ago. We were able to do that with a sustainable public offering framework, which allowed us to bring our environmental values to the public markets in a really meaningful way. Everyone will be familiar maybe with the topic of ESG. It is increasingly an important topic in the world of finance, but often it favours reporting and it favours big companies. So we were able to, as a newer, smaller company, bring a set of standards that we're really, really proud of. So we planted a flag around that, and we were also able to raise some money to double down on our investment in materials, to grow our retail footprint, and it's a real privilege to be playing really on the ultimate stage in business, as a business that's had purpose and profit at the center of how we thought about things from the beginning.
And quite a tension, right, in that so much of the public markets are based on short-term thinking, like the next quarter and the next, earnings call, while you have a very long-term vision. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think there's always a tension between those two things. It's not dissimilar in some ways from my previous life as an athlete playing sport. You want to win every game, of course you do, but the reality is you don't. But in the fullness of time, the best teams win the season, and so you have to balance a need to deliver in the short term, and we were incredibly focused on that. But also the belief that you're 7 years since we founded Allbirds, 7 years into a 100+ year journey, that to build a brand that really shifts a category towards sustainable and natural materials, and that's what we believe we're doing. We've got a long way to go to prove that. But again, from my sporting days, pressure is a privilege. This was started as a Kickstarter campaign. It was an idea that no one believed in for a long time, and now we're a company, with north of 1,000 employees and a global platform. And a long way to go, a lot to prove, but a lot to be proud of too in terms of where we're at.
And how are things advancing on that mission? Because there have been some really interesting new initiatives, some that touch home to New Zealand, like the work with ZQ Merino.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're most proud of is that we made, sort of 19 areas of focus around our sustainable public offering framework, and we're reporting on all of those and delivering on all of those as we planned. And so we're really proud of that. We've also got a long-term sustainability commitment we call our flight plan that commits to halving our carbon footprint in half by 2025 and taking it as close to zero as we possibly can by 2030, which, is really one of the most detailed, if not the most detailed out there in the footwear industry, and has some really aggressive time frames and very specific and very transparent goals that we're shooting towards. So we're rallying around that. And I think at the heart of that is a commitment to make carbon and carbon footprinting our North Star around sustainability. And to do that, we really needed to be very innovative with the use of low carbon or even negative carbon materials. And at the core of that is a project we worked on with our long-term partners, New Zealand Merino, who have been real visionaries in this area and represent a network of farms that represents about 15% of New Zealand's agricultural landmass. And we've been working with them on a regenerative fibre program that is at the core of a lot of the work that we're doing and the basis of a really important project we're going to release in a few weeks, actually.
What does regenerative farming mean in this context?
Well, it's funny you say that. A couple of years ago, I jumped on the phone and spoke with a lot of those growers, and there was a little bit of a hullabaloo. Regenerative oftentimes, in the minds of the farming community not that long ago was equated with, sort of hippies and alternative ways of thinking about farming. And, I was able to, I think, convey to them with my Allbirds hat on that this was really about economic opportunity. It was about the future not only of farming, but also of the environmental movement. And now let's be clear, for a better part of a generation, there's not many New Zealanders that have been growing up wanting to be, to be farmers. And moreover, the farming community has often been held up as an enemy of the environment. And my message was really, hey, the world is changing. There is a pivot back away from synthetic fibres derived from petroleum, back towards natural materials. And moreover, regenerative farming principles we're starting to understand is one of the single biggest levers that we can pull to reverse the impact of climate change. So this is an economic opportunity, but it's also an opportunity to hand this land over to the next generation of people that want to be part of creating the future. So it's, as a New Zealander, an incredibly, a special message and a special project to be working on, and incredible credit to the New Zealand Merino Company and to their growing network who have jumped in and really done some incredible work to mobilise their community in the last couple of years.
It's like this idea that just being sustainable isn't sustainable, right? Because that's just like treading water when we've got a bigger challenge than that, and things like being regenerative come into that. So what does that mean in practical terms? Like, what are these farms doing to leave things better than they are, not just kind of staying at an equilibrium?
Yeah, I think I think it's a great question, and sometimes we get caught up in words like sustainable and regenerative. At the end of the day, people don't want to buy sustainable products; they want to buy great ones. But I would strongly make the case that you can't buy a great product today unless it's deeply considerate of the environment and the communities in which it's built, and so similarly, a word like regenerative has its basis in some real science, which is, let's understand each farm is unique, that there is different ways to farm, but also, most importantly, we need to measure each property to understand the unique carbon footprint of the fibre that's coming out the gate. Wool or farming is a little bit like saying cars. There's electric cars and then there's gas guzzling Hummers. It's a broad term, and each property is different. And we're starting to understand the impact of cover crops and rotational grazing and all the various things that might go into a farm actually storing or sequestering more carbon than it's emitting. And so we first have to measure that. And New Zealand Merino have done some incredible jobs with, to start to develop some technological solutions with some partners, to measure that really efficiently. And for us, that's really important because we're making pledges through our flight plan to lower the carbon intensity of the fibre that we use. So we need to partner with these growers. And oftentimes what we're understanding is that these farms that have been labelled as producing high carbon fibre are actually producing much lower carbon fibre than they thought, but we just never had measured it before. So all this is happening in real time. It's happening quickly. But the key message to understand, if you're a grower, is that you can make something that's worth more money. And and you can be part of the future, because increasingly the fashion industry is waking up to the need to not only shift from synthetic to natural fibres, but also to measure their carbon footprint and to leverage regenerative materials that have low or negative carbon impact to improve their overall business footprint. And this is a really, really powerful way to do that.
One cool thing that you've consistently done as a company is pioneer things like this and then open source them to the industry, whether it be carbon labelling, this kind of process, or the sweet foam, which is the material used for your jandals and some other things that you're working on, right? Tell me about how you open sourced that to the rest of the industry and how that actually makes kind of business sense, even though, traditionally what you'd do with something you'd pioneered for yourself is keep it for yourself.
Well, let's just be really clear, just in the context of regenerative agriculture, Allbirds is not, doing the pioneering here. That's the growers. That's New Zealand Merino and the growing network. We're shining a light on a consumer need and understanding that carbon footprints are important. But a lot of times they've done this work and they've been doing it for generations. They just never got credit for it. So, credit to them there. And as it relates to sort of our broader approach to innovation, we're bringing new products to market, whether it be a plant leather or a new material like sweet foam that you mentioned that won a bunch of awards, that was based on the waste stream of the production of ethanol to create a bio-based midsole foam material that won a bunch of awards and was really important for us. And I think it's a great example of where purpose and profit can intersect. We made that open source not only because we knew that the more people that use this material, the better off the environment would be, and it's a material that's used a lot in footwear, EVA, and to make it from a bio-based alternative was better for the environment. But we also knew that by the more companies that used it, the cost would come down, and we were able to put what's called a favoured nation term in the agreement that allowed us to always capture the best price as we went first and then invited others in. So there's now north of 100 companies globally using that material, and it's created efficiency while at the same time, allowing this material to be more broadly adopted in a footwear industry that makes 25 billion plus pairs of shoes a year. And Allbirds is a tiny speck on a huge market. So we want to live our purpose, but we want to also look for opportunities where we can, drive business efficiency. And oftentimes those two things are the same. And that's why I think when you hear a word like sustainable, you sometimes assume, Simon, that it's more expensive and less good. And I think we need to swap that and see it more as a transformational shift in the way that we make products and services, and that it's full of economic and innovation opportunity.
And we'll be back with Tim to hear about his new role, their moonshot, and what's next. Spark is proud to partner with the Sustainable Business Network and the Climate Action Toolbox. The free Climate Action Toolbox can provide you with simple step-by-step guides to measure and reduce your emissions. Help lead the way to a low-carbon future for New Zealand. Visit sparklab.co.nz/sustainability to find out more.
Ready to rediscover the joys of cycling? With over 300 kilometres of cycle paths across Tāmaki Makaurau, jumping on your bike and going for a ride is such a fun way to discover the city from a different perspective. Cycling is getting more and more popular across Auckland, so now's a great time to join the hype and give cycling a go. Head to at.govt/cycling to find your nearest cycleway today.
Raising capital or taking your business to the world? Investment Fix has the lowdown on everything you need to make it happen. This season, we're exploring the US market, the opportunities it offers, what it takes to grow a business there, and the best way to approach investors. Join some of the superstars of the investment and business world as they share advice from their time in the US so you can make your mahi count in this massive market. The Investment Fix podcast, brought to you by Invest New Zealand. Tune in today.
Hoki mai anō, we're back with Tim Brown, co-founder and co-CEO at Allbirds, and now lead of the Futures team. Tell me about that. What's a Futures team, and what does it mean for you and the change in what you deliver at the company?
Yeah, look, I mean, you're constantly, when you're growing a company, having to reinvent yourself. And I started the business before I even met my co-founder in an apartment in Cuba Street in Wellington while I was still playing football. And I had a dream that there was a big potential to create a shoe out of merino wool in a way that hadn't been done before. And quite a number of people laughed at that idea, and probably with good reason at the time. But we worked and we built it, and now the company's much bigger. And along the way, I'm constantly sort of revisiting, how I can best make the contribution to the team. And I've shifted my role to focus on, our internal culture, our partnerships, and also our innovation, our long-term future projects. That's really, really near and dear to my heart. And the core of it, are things like the partnership with New Zealand Merino and our work with them on really adopting regenerative wool across every aspect of the product that we make to meet the commitments of our flight plan. And it's incredibly exciting, and it's been the basis for a new product that we're going to release built off that material that we call our Moonshot project, which is something that's been the basis of 3 or 4 years of work from a small internal innovation team to deliver the world's first carbon zero shoe. So it's a big deal for us.
Yeah, tell us about that Moonshot, as you've had a couple of things on the way there, hey, like the lowest carbon footprint shoe known and measured, and now you've gone carbon zero.
Yeah, well, the first thing is that every sort of object that we use and has a carbon footprint. That's the thing that connects me to you, New Zealand to America, the footwear industry, to the transport industry, and it all rolls up to a global number that we've got to reduce. So everyone's connected to that, whether they're aware of that or not. And we've started to label every product that we make with the kilograms of carbon that are emitted in the production. Think of that like calories on food. It's not the whole answer to a healthy diet, but it's an important North Star for understanding the impact of the product. And that's really one of the first to do that in the footwear industry. It's something we're really proud of, and it started to become the basis of how we've innovated. And when you understand that carbon footprint, you understand that you've got to introduce new materials and lower carbon intensity methods of manufacturing and shipping and transport and packaging. You have to think and consider every detail. And it becomes a really exciting creative opportunity. And it attracted Adidas, to work with us in a partnership. And we did that for a couple of years with those guys, and incredible respect for their commitment to try and learn from a young new business and move faster. And so we committed to try and release the lowest carbon footprint shoe that we could. And it landed at 2.94, which is half a hamburger. Just to put that in perspective, we were really proud of that. And I think our team walked away and said, oh, no, I think we can go a step further. We can get to zero. If we can put a man on the moon, we can make a pair of shoes and a T-shirt with zero carbon impact. That was kind of the gist of it. And so we've been working on that. And on the 21st of March, we're going to announce that we've got there, and we're going to release the first, reveal the first prototypes of that in June at a big global fashion summit in Copenhagen.
Yeah, that's so cool. And what other products can you bring that zero carbon regenerative approach to? Like you talk about footwear and apparel, you've started to do some clothing and the like. Like what are you, acting as this kind of like leader and exemplar in an industry, where else could Allbirds go?
Oh, well, we're just focused on shoes at the moment, and we're doing some stuff in apparel. But really, our DNA is in shoes, but we hope this will be an example for others to follow. On the back of the partnership with Adidas, ASICS, the storied footwear brand, released a low carbon footprint shoe. Fantastic. We've had so many people reach out to us saying, hey, we want to learn, we want to understand, we want to, and so we've made our carbon calculator, which is really an internal tool that we created. We've made that open source. You can still go on our website and download that. Incredible interest And you're starting to see this pivot, which is incredible. In many ways, the scientists have done their job. They've identified that we need to both measure the impact of the products, and that there's a problem. We have to reduce the impact of the way that we live. And now you're seeing, particularly the design community, kind of connect to that and see it as a creative problem. And they're starting to crave knowledge and understanding. And I like to think we've played a little bit of a part in that. And hopefully this project is an example, hey, this is possible. You've got to do the work. I think people want ice cream in this moment, Simon. They want a quick solve. This is a game of inches and hard work. And then you connect with the New Zealand merino growing community, and you find these incredible pieces of land and these incredible farms that are doing this work, producing the fibre that, as a Kiwi is leading the world. And you think, okay, all of this is possible. You've got to connect a lot of dots. You've got to commit to it, and you've got to do the work. But it is possible. And so I'd like to think that we can keep going with that, and hopefully this attracts a whole bunch of other people too that want to do it better than we are.
And how do you keep your, because it is such a big job and you are so early in, but how's it been for you personally as well with keeping the morale high and the mission front and centre when, from the outside it looked like the first couple of years were a real fairy tale, and then the last couple of years with the public markets and the IPO and, big economic headwinds and fluctuating share price and stuff, like how does that stuff, how do you manage that personally and keep that big mission in mind?
Oh yeah, you've got to remember where you come from. I launched this business on the back of 3 or 4 years of work while I was still playing football for the Phoenix, dreaming of going to a World Cup with New Zealand. I visited a footwear factory for the first time that I found online. I didn't know what I was doing. I had an inkling of an idea, and people were coming out of the woodwork to tell me it was rubbish and it wasn't going to work. And launched it on Kickstarter with the help of my brother, and $700 on a family friend's farm in Pahatanui off Grays Road. So most days are a bonus. The fairy tale is very, very much alive. We're now a public company with a whole bunch of pressure and expectation and new challenges. But look, no one's gonna tell me that I haven't been extraordinarily lucky and that I'm not living some sort of dream. And it comes with responsibility. And so you're constantly having to reframe that and reset the mission. And then we'll just remember also too that you're really, really privileged to have got this far. And equally, there's so much further you could take this.
What's your advice for people who are trying to establish a new idea in a culture, or act as an exemplar, to bring about the change? Like, how do you keep going, and how do you keep finding ways to land it in the culture?
Well, I've been really fortunate, and I had a platform and a space when I was playing sport to explore this. But life's pretty short. It seems to me what an incredible privilege and opportunity, if you possibly can, to be working on something that you care about, and maybe not just because you're making a contribution, possibly to ideas or the community or things that are bigger than yourself, but also probably because if you feel that on some level, you're gonna perform at a better level. It's not without risk. It's not easy. It's not for everyone, certainly in the context of entrepreneurship. And I've been fortunate in so many different ways. But, the one thing I would sort of say is, I think certainly in the early stages of bringing an idea into the world, I think it's almost natural in human nature to seek feedback and to get a lot of advice. And when I look back on my early journey, I did that, and I did that profoundly and transparently and honestly. But there's also a little part of you that's got to kind of ignore some of it or a lot of it and do what you want to do because that's just what you want to do and that's who you are, and the world be damned. And usually the best ideas, the people that know the most disagree with them on some level, or think that they're not going to work, or think that they're too small or too big. And so you got to just sort of trust that and push it. And it's funny, just as I've been wanting to quit or just a bit about to give up, that's usually when something's broken through. So it's entirely possible, and I won't revert to cliche here, but that's been my story. Is I've just trusted that little voice and pushed it a little bit further, and then been able to step up to the next level.
Yeah, love it. And I've heard before from you that this was an idea that was wrong for a long time before it was right, and having that conviction to carry it through. And as a final thought, what will success be for you now with this bigger platform and ability to deliver?
Oh, I've always kept that pretty simple. Are you enjoying yourself? Have you got a smile on your face? More often than not, it's not all easy, but that's pretty important. Are you making some sort of contribution, beyond just yourself? And I think in the DNA of this brand and business, I've been really fortunate to always have that very, very clear in my mind. And then you're working with people that are great, that you respect, that aren't just always your friends, that are challenging you too, that you're learning from. And very, very fortunate to say all of those are true. So just keep rolling, and just keep going back to the work. And there's a lot of joy that comes from deep creative work that's challenging. I think there's a lot of talk at the moment around sort of work and life balance and all this, which assumes that sort of work is bad and life is good, and it's more complicated than that. But when you're working on something that really means something with a group of people, and I've had the good fortune of being able to do that in sport and now in business, that doesn't get much better than that. And we've certainly not on every day, but on our best days, had that at Allbirds, and that's a feeling I want to keep feeling.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank you for sharing the story so far. Look forward to seeing where you take it next, Tim Brown.
Well, always a privilege to chat with you, mate. Thank you for having me.
So thank you to Tim Brown, to you for listening, and for everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Samuel Robinson. Do follow Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to rate and leave a review if you like what we do in Nohora.
From the Spin-Off Podcast Network, that was Business is Boring, brought to you by SparkLab. Make sure you're following Business is Boring wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information on SparkLab, visit sparklab.co.nz.
K-pop to me means more than just listening to music. It's learning to be myself.
The Spin-Off's new documentary, K-Pollies, follows 3 Pacific youth obsessed with K-pop. In a one-off documentary, see what they've found in Korean pop culture and how they bridge it with their own.
When you start dressing, looking different, everyone side-eyes you. But in K-pop, they're just like, no, celebrate yourself.
Watch K-Pollies today at thespinoff.co.nz/videos. Made with the support of New Zealand On Air. The Spin-Off Podcast Network.